They dropped a little clip for the Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you think about that. You have one of the more unique takes when it comes to anything animated for television. So I'm really wanting to know what you think about that.
Well, it's funny. I like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it doesn't seem like it's geared towards little kids. It's geared a little bit more towards adult minds. The
Mm-hmm.
CGI looks good, but then
Mm-hmm.
that's part of where my problem comes in. Is it's like, okay, here's some decent CGI with some decent shadowing and stuff like that, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're gonna put completely flat looking characters over top of that.
And there it
Um,
is. I feel like you're nitpicking this, and that frustrates me because I feel like I need to establish an important thing. Adam has not really taken The Simpsons seriously. The Simpsons, as in season 3 through season 9, which are essentially flawless. If you've watched any animated television series ever, you would agree. Why doesn't Adam religiously subscribe to that idea? Because he feels that The Simpsons animation is subpar, which, by the way, happened in the 90s when no one was doing network television animation beyond what you would see in a feature film.
Technically, it
Adam,
started in the '80s.
oh, I'm talking season 3 through season 9. But if we want to talk about 1989 when season 1 aired, sure. I'm talking about the fact that The Simpsons, he can't take seriously and appreciate the writing, the storytelling, the characters
The first few seasons, I was on board
because
with.
of the animation. Can you fathom that? No, no one can. So let me move on. I'm going to point out the fact that Star Trek Lower Decks is handled by an individual named Mike McMahon. Who is Mike McMahon? Two very important things about Mike McMahon. One, Mike McMahon runs a Twitter handle called The Next Generation Season 8. TNG Season 8. Beloved by fans. What else does he do? Rick and Morty. I say this because Adam won't watch Rick and Morty because of the animation quality of Rick and Morty.
I
Adam,
don't
have
watch.
you ever read a book?
I,
No. Adam, have you ever read a book? Do you know that when you read a book or read a comic, which, by the way, since in the spirit of Comic Con, guess how the animation is in comics? There's none.
but
There's
the
no
art,
animation in
but the
comics.
art, the art. The when I got started getting into comic books, it was I was a teenager, and we're talking like Todd
Mhm.
McFarlane and Marvel type of time frame, which
So is
his
Peanuts bullshit, Adam? Is Peanuts bullshit because of the drawing compared to Todd McFarlane?
um. Well, from a art standpoint, yeah, Todd McFarlane's art is way better than the Peanuts
That's not
art.
the question, though. Do we dismiss Peanuts as a proper form of good, good writing, very,
But
astute world views?
when they did updated Peanuts, what did they do? They used CGI, and it actually was good animation.
That's a
That's different.
movie. I'm talking about comics. I'm talking
Right.
about newspaper print.
And if you look at some of the Netflix animated stuff, like I didn't like some of the changes storyline to the Voltron cartoon that they put out, but the animation on the Voltron cartoon was well done.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't like the animation on the Shira, so I refused to ever watch that because I didn't like the not just the animation but the changes they did. And
No
a
one's
lot
blowing up message boards about Shira. No one is saying,
right,
hammering down their fist, saying this is an all-time top show. Go on.
but it's not a there is a when you're talking about an art form that is partially art because animation is
Uh,
an art form. If you
I
don't
agree.
like the art,
I spent my life wanting to be an animator,
right?
so I
If
totally
if
appreciate
if
it.
you don't like the art, then yeah, it's very possible for somebody who is very visually based, who likes good stories but also likes good
Me,
animation,
me,
especially if he
me.
watches a lot of anime. Um,
Not really me. Go on.
when you watch a lot of anime and you see some really great animation that's done, and then you turn around and watch um, what we do, it's frustrating at times. You know,
I don't know that.
it would be different. It would be different if we were also, besides putting out these like fun cartoony like cartoons, um, we were also putting out cool animation at the same time. We are
There's
so
cool animation, and there's
we're
animation as a vehicle to deliver very, very good writing, though. You can't dismiss a show to be able to say, oh, well, the animation isn't quite what I would want. It's not on par with anime, which by the way,
but I still have to
shitty anime that people worship. Go on.
I agree. There are some shitty anime that people worship
in terms of animation and art. Right. The art's usually always very good, but the animation itself is, come on, like.
The thing about when you do stuff like Lower Decks, you do Family Guy, you do Simpsons, there is part of it is stylized for what you wanted to do from a visual standpoint. The other part of it is by not adding any highlights and shadows and stuff like that, not taking any time for that, they can pump the stuff out a hell of a lot faster so they can bank money a whole lot faster. So in order to maximize profits, they skimp on the amount of money they spend on the animation just so they can churn it out as fast as possible in order to give you what could be a better product than it would if they spent a little bit more time. So yes, I think when adding a little bit of, shadowing to your characters and highlights to your characters isn't asking a whole lot. It doesn't need to be animated. It doesn't have to look like your theatrical stuff, but a little bit more work would be fine.
I think you're confusing work with artistic choice. In other words, I think there are instances, sure, where there are cost-saving measures going on, or the ability to be more efficient with what you're ultimately churning out. South Park being a prime example. South Park's goal is to get that script out there and that comedy out there as quickly as possible, and it works for what it's set out to do. What you're describing is something that don't get me wrong, I'm not one that wants people to skimp on the art of things. However, I do think there's something to be said for the character or the actual impression that something gives you to actually deliver that humor. In other words, we've talked about this. The Simpsons, to me, is something that there was sort of a very basic, almost like primitive level of the way they drew those characters, and that added to the humor. It added to the actual visual and almost enhanced and added to the punchline at times. You're basically telling me, by your logic, The Big Bang Theory should have Roger Deakins doing cinematography for it. It makes no sense.
No.
Why can't the Big Bang Theory? Why?
The Big Bang Theory had the Big Bang Theory had character. The Big Bang Theory, though, had character growth.
You're dismissing what is very good art, very, very good art from an arts standpoint, and arts being writing, and arts being, the creative thinking and that sort of thing, and creative output, because of what you perceive as to not be the level of animation that I like. That is nothing about what it should be. If I don't like it, if I don't like it, why would I try to get past it if I don't like it? If I don't visually, could I turn it on, not look at the screen and just listen to it? Sure. Yeah. If I don't like visually looking at animation, it's like turning on a TV show and going, well, the special effects on that are horrible and the set designs are horrible and the lighting is horrible, but, it's got a neat script. Why, that's not enough sometimes. And I'm sorry. For me, that's very visual. When I read comic books, when I picked up a comic book, the first thing I noticed was the art. If the art looked like garbage, I typically put it back. I did not want to grab a comic book. It might have a great storyline on it, but you know what? Part of the reason you buy a comic book instead of just buying a regular book is for the art. Part of the reason you watch an animated show as opposed to just watching a regular show is because of the animation. I hear what you're saying. I'm also a very visual person. Everything that I ever consumed as a kid was something that I felt like, could I try to draw this? Or do I wish I could achieve the ability to draw this thing? A lot of times it ended up being superhero comics because they were so cool, right? Like the way that they were drawn, that felt like very epic and something that was just beyond anything that I was ever capable of as a kid. Yet somehow, throughout all that, I'm reading Calvin and Hobbes, which, not to dismiss Bill Watterson, incredible artist, underappreciated, you may even say, when you compare it to some of these great comic book illustrators of, DC and Marvel and what have you. But you're not going to look at that and go, oh, well, that's very detailed, or that's something that feels very epic or grand. No, I read it because
there's also a difference between having 4 panels in a newspaper or a single panel little cartoon and having something that we're talking like 23 minutes of staring at. There's a whole big difference. Like, that's not the same thing. That's like saying, I read those 4 panels over and over for 20 minutes, like all the different ones. Right. It's like And some of it also goes back to the fact that when I look back at some of the stuff that we used to do from an animation standpoint, we used to put more time into the way that the things look. I mean, some of the 80s cartoons, the visual stylings, were really nice compared to what we put out now. So to a certain extent, it is a budget. We can put it out faster and quicker if we don't worry about any detailing. And that bothers me a little bit because
somebody hurt you. Who was it? What animator hurt you? It was like I understand what you're saying.
So it started off,
wasn't that great. The animation wasn't that great. Like
no. Now the animation from
you watch He-Man, you would laugh. Like
no, they had a lot of repeated stuff. And He-Man, but when you look at some of the other cartoons that came out, Thundercats animation was actually really good. And they had other stuff like Silverhawks that had good animation. You had a lot of stuff that they put a lot more time into. And when Simpsons first came out, I enjoyed The Simpsons. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that after a few seasons, there wasn't character growth after a while. I got tired of the fact. And to a certain extent, I would have been much more impressed with The Simpsons had they actually aged. You can even say the same thing about South Park. They aged them one time, and then that was it.
South Park to me is almost like the equivalent of SNL. I mean, it's almost like it just churns over and over. It's the topic of the day. I know at the end of the day that it's whatever they want to record in studio and get out to the masses. You go to see a stand-up comedian. That stand-up comedian is hilariously ugly. It adds to the comedy. That's my whole point. If that was The Simpsons, Rick and Morty,
when you watch Louis Anderson stand up, right? His comedy is almost a lot of it filters around the fact that he's overweight.
Yeah,
and that's fine. That's what it's about. But a lot of these other things don't go, well, we're making fun of satirical cartoons by being a bad cartoon. No, they're being satirical about some other things, but not about being a bad cartoon as far as animation goes. They just go, look, this is our style.
Kind of plays in that little sandbox, but yeah, okay.
Not early on, they didn't. They might be now because they've been around for a few decades, but...
Did you watch the 1989 first season of The Simpsons and just be like, no? And that was it?
I was actually a fan. I have pictures of me with a Bart Simpson shirt and stuff like that. The early seasons, I was a fan, but it wore on me.
Flintstones, Jetsons, Hanna-Barbera, right? That's much more in line with what you saw with Simpsons, and arguably Simpsons did it better in terms of animation.
Right, but at the same time, the Jetsons and Flintstones were talking about a few decades before then, when cartoons were a little bit more niche.
I think Simpsons was significantly better in the animation department compared to those shows, though.
Well, I should hope so. A few decades later, I should hope so. If you haven't progressed a few decades from The Simpsons and Flintstones, then yeah, that's a problem.
And how many seasons of those shows were there, and how many episodes in a season? My point being, Simpsons was running 23, 24 episodes a season. They were churning it out, and they were getting great content out there.
Because of the fact, it goes back to the idea, and it's a completely different philosophy of they don't, over in Japan, most of the time put out, there's a few long-running things that come out every single week, and they really rarely only take a few weeks off in a year on those series. But most of the stuff is, we wrote a story, we animated the story, we took the time to animate it well, and here it is. And if there's another season, yeah, that might take another year or so, because, hey, that takes time to do good quality on it. But here's the story that you're looking for, as opposed to how many episodes can we churn out as fast as we can just because we want the content so we can make the money. That's what it's about. It's not about storyline. Yeah, they might have good writing, but it has nothing to do with actually storyline. It's about 20-minute storylines. Some of them do, but some of them don't. Some of them are just they're 20-minute pop-ups, little things. That's with no progression over the course of 10 seasons that they might be on. It's just we make 20-minute little. They might as well be little viral videos, because that's about the attention span you need for them.
Holy shit! If you're watching this video, give it thumbs down. I will not blame you. Actually, give it thumbs up if you hate Adam's take. Give it a thumbs up if you hate Adam's.
Oh, I totally expect that there's comments on
get
this.
a
I'm
lot
going to
of
get
likes.
blasted. To a certain extent, I think we almost need to do a video about that because I almost feel like, you know,
All the energy went into it, Adam. I'm exhausted. It's all you've got for me. That's all you got for me. If I were to do that rant again, it would be what you would consider to be a Simpsons version of that rant. You would have been so distracted by my movements being so unanimated. What you got was your anime version of me.
All right, I think that's it. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you like this channel, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to know when our next video comes out, hit the bell and you'll be notified whenever we put new content out.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, everyone.